G'day, I'm Brian from BsianTech. We're going to have a look into this Asus ExpertBook B5 Flip. It's a 14-inch business class 2-in-1 laptop. They do come in a clamshell, but this one here I've got is a flip version. We're going to have a look into the features of this computer as well as do the jitter test and look into the internals as well as the temperatures and fan noise. And as always, I will be putting timestamps along this video so you can skip to different sections that you may be interested to save you time. So let's get the show on the roll. We'll start off with what this computer can be configured with. With the processor, it is using the 11th gen Intel core. You can either get an i3 or an i5. As for the RAM wise, it can go up to a maximum capacity of 48 gigs. Now that's a funny number, isn't it? Why that is the case is because there is parts of it that is soldered to the system board, which can go up to a maximum of 16 gig that's soldered to the system board. And then it's got one slot of SODIMM slot so you can upgrade later on. And that has a maximum capacity of 32 gigs for that SODIMM slot. With the storage, it has 2 slots of M.2 SSD, and they are PCIe version 3. And it does support the 2280 format. With the graphics, it is the Intel integrated graphics. Now, if you've got it configured with the i3, it is the Intel UHD, and if you've got the i5, it is the Intel RSXe, which is the more accelerated, better graphics. As for the display, there are 2 options. They're both full HD options, so you can either get a 300 nit of brightness or the 470 nit brightness. They both have an anti-glare sort of matte style finish on the display, and this particular display I've got here is the 300 nit of brightness. Now I did take it out into broad daylight and worked off when the sun was shining directly on it, and I was still decently able to read the screen and still work on the laptop. So that's not too bad on the 300 nit of brightness. Now I also had a look at the light leaks from the backlight, and I didn't really find it had too much light leak on the display. So this display is not too bad at all. Measuring the color gamut coverage of the Asus ExpertBook B5 with the 300 nit Full HD display, it resulted with 94.5% sRGB coverage, 66.3% Adobe RGB coverage, and 68.6% DCI P3 coverage. The B5 does have a 720p webcam located above the display. It also has a privacy shutter, which is great for security, and it's just a matter of sliding the lever and you see a physical shutter that goes over the lens, which is red in color, just to indicate that there is something physically covering the lens. So if it accidentally turns on, you don't have to worry about putting a blue tack or electrical tape for those that are worried about, which is absolutely fantastic. But I do wish they had an option for a 1080p webcam, as we are in 2022 these days, and we do a lot more video conferencing and do a lot more content creation with the webcam. So it'd be nice to see in the next iteration to go up to a 1080p webcam. This is a recording from the 720p webcam from the Asus ExpertBook B5. This is the video and audio unedited so I can hear and see what the quality of the webcam is like. As always, I've got 2 types of lights currently turned on. I've got my one strill light turned on, and I've got the down lights in this room turned on. There are 4 in total. I'm going to turn my one strill light turned off now, and you see this adjust now. You see, I think it adjusted pretty quickly. And I've got 2 downlights in front, which is quite far away, and so there's not much light currently hitting on my face. So this is what I consider a dark environment. Now, if you're in an office environment, you should get much more better light than what I'm currently in. And I'm going to turn my one strill light back on again. Of course, better quality light gives you better quality picture. Now, I'm also going to test out also the AI noise reduction on the microphone. So I've got 2 computers now at the moment stress testing. They're quite loud at the moment, so you'll see how loud this is. So I'm going to just be quiet. It's about 44 decibels. And I'm going to now turn off the AI noise reduction. And this is what you'll hear. So I definitely love to hear what your thoughts are of this AI noise reduction from the microphone. So I'm just going to turn the AI noise reduction back on. and hopefully I'd love to hear your comments below. Let's have a look at the ports. Starting on the left side of the computer, there is two Thunderbolt 4 ports, which is USB Type-C. You can use any of these two ports to charge the computer. Micro HDMI port. With this micro HDMI port, there is available a micro HDMI to RJ45 Ethernet adapter. Volume keys, which is useful for when it's in tablet mode. Looking at the back, there's only the two air vents. Looking on the right hand side of the computer, power button, headphone jack, USB 3.2 Gen 2. This is USB Type A port, full-size HDMI port, which is version 2.0B, and Kensington lock slot. There are two speakers located on the bottom front of the laptop. When I tested the maximum volume of the speakers, it managed to measure in at a peak of 80.6 decibels, which is decent. So if you're doing a presentation out at a cafe or outdoors, you shouldn't have any issues doing that presentation or be heard from this laptop. As for the sound quality of the speakers, surprisingly, it had a bit of bass for a business laptop. As for the mids and highs, they were decent, but I did hear a bit of distortions from the mids when it was brought up to the maximum volume. So it would have been nice to hear a little bit more clarity from the mids. Now, as for the acoustics, it had a bit of reverb, which is a bit different that I did not expect as well from a business laptop, but still sounded pretty decent. So with the speakers, they're not too bad at all. Audio from the Asus ExpertBook B5 at 100%.
Like stars in the darkest night, crystal lights fascinate. If you wanna stay alive, if you don't wanna be her prey, don't stand in her way. Run, run, run away. Crystallize, 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 watching her break. Crystallize, crystallize, crystal lights fascinate.
The weight of the ExpertBook B5 is 1.25 kilos plus the 65 watt power adapter becomes a total weight of 1.57 kilos that you might be carrying around with you. With the battery life, after my testing, I found that the B5 battery life was pretty decent. And I tested the battery in my usual 5 different modes. So in best performance, it managed to get 2 hours and 50 minutes. And in better performance, it also managed to get 2 hours and 50 minutes. And in better battery life mode, it managed to get 6 hours. And in battery saving mode, it managed to get 8 hours. And in my medium mode, it managed to get 8 hours and 30 minutes. So overall, like I said, pretty decent numbers there. Now I do want to make a disclaimer that in my battery life test, I do put a very consistent workload across all the system resources. So normally with your average use, applications wouldn't hit the system resources as hard and as consistent as I would. So most applications you'll just do in bursts. So you should get better numbers than what I'm quoting you at. As for the temperatures and fan noise of the ExpertBook B5, when I took my measurements, my ambient temperature was 23 degrees Celsius and my ambient room noise was 37 decibels. Now before I read out the results of my readings, I just want to give you a bit of background, is that the average hand is anywhere between 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. So hopefully that gives you a bit of idea on how hot or how cool this laptop could be. So I took my base measure when the computer was on idle, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 30 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it stayed at 37 decibels. And the internal core temperature averaged at 36 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 20% load, so that's pretty much average use. So tasks like office productivity work, streaming videos, surfing the web, and the hottest area on the keyboard managed to hit a maximum of 32 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it stayed at 37 decibels, so still practically quiet. And the internal core temperature was 40 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 50% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 34 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it went up to 38 decibels, so still very quiet. And the internal core temperature was 47 degrees Celsius. Then I put the computer on 100% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard measured in at 40 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, hit a maximum of 42 decibels. And the internal core temperature was averaging about 77 degrees Celsius. I also measured the bottom back cover of the computer when the computer was running 100% load, and the hottest area measured in at 41 degrees Celsius. I also measured the computer when the computer was in tablet mode and had about 20% load, and the hottest area on the keyboard side measured in at 33 degrees Celsius. And as for the fan noise, it was at 37 decibels, so still practically quiet. As for the display side in tablet mode, the hottest area measured in at 30 degrees Celsius, and again stayed at 37 decibels. Seeing the results of the ExpertBook B5, I find it generally pretty quiet and quite cool. Let's have a look at the stability performance of the processor in the B5. This particular B5 is configured with an i5-1135G7, and looking on Intel website, it has a maximum total boost of 4.2 gigahertz, and the base clock speed is 2.4 gigahertz at 28 watt TDP, and it can go all the way down to 900 megahertz at 12 watt TDP if it's feeling really hot or is trying to save power. Ideally, we want to see the performance above or at 2.4 gigahertz, and I have this computer connected to mains power, and I've set to performance in power scheme and so performance mode in the power scheme in Asus as well. So I've got this computer running on 100% load for over 3 hours. So that's the processor, RAM, and also the hard drive. So the storage is running at 100% load, and we can see that the speed of the processor is averaging anywhere between 3.4 to about 3.7 gigahertz. So that's its range. So I'd say an average of about 3.5 gigahertz. So that's pretty high. So it is much higher than 2.4 gigahertz at the base clock speed, and so I don't see this having any thermal throttling. It does have a little bit of turbo throttling, but that's not very much. It's actually quite high, so they're doing quite well. The keyboard on the ExpertBook B5 is the usual Asus keyboard, and I kind of like it because there is no really weird, funky different areas and rearrangements of keys on the Asus keyboard. But they do have some nice little extra keys like the snippet tool already, and they also have the Asus button, which helps you can change different profiles or even just change the different parts of the computer and the AI. Very nice. And as for each keys, it has quite a bit of key travel, about 1.5 mils, which is a decent amount. Now they have a bit of tactile feel to it, and they're not really that loud. The keys aren't really that loud, and also they have a nice smooth texture to each keys, have a nice decent sort of spacing in between each keys. And as for the size of each keys, I call them medium for each individual keys. And as for the trackpad, I do like this Asus trackpad because they've got a very unique little thing that a lot of Asus have, and that is they built in a number pad into the trackpad by a nice little push of the top right hand area of the trackpad, and it brings up number pad system, which is a nice innovation, and you can just tap it again and then it just disappears. Now the trackpad feel is quite glass feel to it, so it's very silky smooth, and it is mechanical, so it's hinged at the top, and you can depress it at the bottom and do hear it kind of click. As for the build construction of the ExpertBook B5. Now this is something I can't really tell you exactly because I could not find the information about, but I'll just tell you what I feel from my own feelings, because I have touched a fair number of business laptops before, and I can tell you for the top cover here, it is, I'm not going to lie to you, we'll call it plastic, but it's a good grade plastic, and also from the bottom is again plastic, but again a good grade plastic. It does have a very nice finish to it, And as for the internal chassis and also the palm rest, that's not plastic. It doesn't feel like plastic. It feels like a magnesium alloy, which is a bit of a weird. I would have expected them to use it all the way from the back as well. But hey, but still, it is a very strong sort of build construction here. So I don't get too much flex here or bend, but I'm pushing a fair bit of things. So I find this can definitely is very durable. Even the keyboard doesn't have that much flex, and I'm putting a lot of weight on that. And I'm not light, I'm not crazy heavy, but definitely not light. So that can take a bit of punishment, this Asus ExpertBook B5. So build construction wise, it definitely has, well, it does say it has military grade, does pass those. So the Asus ExpertBook B5 does have stylus support. Now the ExpertBook B5 did come packaged with this Asus stylus that I have here. Now it is quite thick. It's about the same sort of thickness as a normal pen that you would write, but I find it's just a little more thicker than our usual pen. It does have one button here, but it is two-sided, so you can have that configured in two sides. There is no button on top, and it does support up to 4096 pressure levels. Now it does run off a AAA battery as well, and you can probably buy a rechargeable for that, and it should last for a pretty long time. Unfortunately, I won't have this ExpertBook B5 to see how long it's able to last, but normally using a AAA battery should last for at least 6 months or even a year running off this. They don't run very much power, and it is, you can feel the movement of the tip at the top here for the pen sensitivity level. We're going to perform the line jitter test on the Asus ExpertBook B5. So I'm going to try and do some slow diagonal lines. Now I'm not a digital artist or have any art training, so I'll bear in mind on my straight lines. I'll do my best to do them. I do have one palm on the display, and I think I'll do some quick lines and some horizontal lines. Again, this is with one hand on the display. Now, the Asus stylus does have 4096 pressure levels, and it does support this as I'm doing soft, hard, soft, hard, soft as I'm pressing into the display. Now I do find this display very sensitive, and I'm going to do some spirals. And check the parallax. It's very, very quick. I've got to admit, this is a very quick reactive display with the stylus. And I'll do some writing. And I found writing on the ExpertBook using this Asus pen. Now, nothing against the ExpertBook B5. It's actually really sensitive, but this pen here, I found writing is not as comfortable as I thought it might be. It is quite thick compared to our other digital pens. I didn't really make this comment in my other videos, but having a really big, long play with this one, I like to see it just slim down just a little tad, or have this taper off a little bit more. So when we're holding it, and this button here can be moved a little bit higher up, because I find I keep pressing it all the time. So I'm holding this quite down low. Normally I would hold it down here, now I'm constantly pressing this button here every time I'm writing. So I was just making a comment there, so I like to see this maybe moved a little bit higher up. I know some people might not like having it high up, but I think because I write quite high up compared to a lot of people, that's my usual holding the pen style from here. I don't normally try to hold it down here where I can avoid it, and my writing hasn't been fantastic because of that anyway. Let's have a look at where the stylus could be stored. It could be stored at the bottom front lip of the laptop. You'll find it is magnetic all along down here, and that's where it goes. Now, if you put it in tablet mode, you'll find this nice little sort of a head lid, and the bottom of it, you'll find this nice little V shape, and it pretty much sticks right in between here. And adding the magnetic does help a little bit. Now I do like to say that even with this magnetic end down here, it'd be nice to have this magnetic a little bit stronger. As you can see, it doesn't really get to there. So I like to see the magnetism or stronger magnets to hold this pen, because it is a bit on the, it does fall off there. So you have to get it really right in the area. So it's right down here, there's one here, and there's one right here is where the magnets are. I like to see that a little bit stronger would be fantastic for the pen. I did perform the benchmarks for this B5. This one's configured with an i5 1135G7 with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs SSD. So I'll put up the scores for Citybench R23, PC Mark, 3D Mark, Geekbench 5, Crystal Disk Mark, Blender, Pugin Photoshop, Pugin Lightroom, Pugin Premiere Pro, MATLAB 2020B, Eugene Engine, Spec View Pref, and also some gaming benchmarks like Far Cry New Dawn and Immortal Phoenix Rising. Let's have a look at the internals. First off, we just need to undo the 10 Phillips head screws. That's good to see that's using Phillips head screws, so we don't need a special screwdriver. And you just need to pry it open. Now, my tip to pry it open is start from the hinge and then work your way inwards, and then start from hinge, work your way around, and repeat on the other side. Start from hinge and work your way in, and then you'll be able to pry it open. Now, I'll pry this one open already to speed up time. And let's start off with what we can upgrade on this B5. In the middle, we've got the M.2 SSD. Now this is a 2280 format, and then down on the left here, we've got another M.2. Again, it is 2280 format as well. And on the right here is the SODIMM slot for the RAM. So you can upgrade RAM. Fantastic. And then of course, this is the processor that lives underneath here. Now the Wi-Fi module, it looks to be soldered to the system board, so it doesn't look like you can upgrade that at all. And we've got the 66 watt hour battery. Now the connector for the battery is here. There is a special way to open it and disconnect it. And I'm just going to show it to you first off. You do need something to pry it with. And what you need to do is pry it from the bottom. Pry it, you just got to really get, there is a little metal part. And you just need to pry that, you need to push it upwards, which I've just now pushed it upwards. And then you can pry it from the side upwards, and just give a nice little pry from the side upwards. And then that should hopefully get it out. So you do need something to pry it open, because you can't really do it with your fingers. If you've got long fingers, maybe you can do it, but I really wouldn't risk it. And after that, you've got 2 screws on the top and 2 screws at the bottom to take off, and then you can pretty much lift it up and then pull it out. So this is what's underneath. As we can see, we've got the CMOS battery here. So it is connected to this little connector here. So you don't really need to disconnect the battery fully to reset the CMOS battery. What I like to see improve on the Asus ExpertBook B5, I like to see an option for a 1080p webcam, and also an IR for those who want to use Windows Hello. And I also like to see a fingerprint option for those businesses who do use biometric scans as security. And also I like to see the speakers, maybe making them a little bit louder, especially when you're in tablet mode, just when you're outdoors. Even though I did say they were decently, you shouldn't have any issues, I like to see it just a little bit more louder anyway. And also a better placing for the pen, as all the magnetism for the pen on the laptop just need to be stronger, so we can actually have that stick a little better and stayed on, because it did fall off a bit when I was testing it. Now what I like about this computer is, I think build constructions was absolutely fantastic. I love the keyboard and the trackpad. They're really good to work with, and the pen, that was decent to work with. It was quite sensitive, but that was really decent for the pen support. And the display, I like actually how bright it was, and with the battery life, considering the battery life, but I'd still like to see maybe a 4K option for those who do want to go a 4K option. I also like how the B5 ran quite cool and quite quiet in most business tasks. So overall, I can recommend the Asus ExpertBook B5. I hope you find this video informative or enjoyed it, and even to support my channel, smack that like button. It does help me out. And if you haven't done already, subscribe my channel again, hit that subscribe button for me. And I also have membership as well, and I do try to upload a new video every week. And as always, imperfections in life makes it beautiful and interesting. And I'll catch you in the next video.